When you think of a sponge, you may think of something like this. But sponges are a very diverse phyla and come in many shapes and sizes, living at shallow and great depths in salt and fresh water. Despite their differences, most sponges share certain features. One feature commonly found in sponges is the presence of spicules, tiny fragments forming sponge skeletons. These spicules are made out of different kinds of material and come in many shapes and sizes. The simplest spicules are made out of glass, formed into long rods. But despite the strength of the material that makes them, these rod-shaped glass spicules sometimes break, forming fine surfaces. Other spicules are made out of hard calcium carbonate, which also tend to be quite sharp. Another sponge, Grantia, has calcium carbonate spicules, but in different shapes. Though it has the rod-shaped spicules you just saw, it also has three-pointed spicules, known as triaxons. Notice how these spicules fit in around the holes in the sponge surface. These spicules can fit in elsewhere in the sponge, helping to form a tight network that can strengthen the sponge's skeleton. This skeletal reinforcement is arguably the most critical function spicules have. Examine this image closely. This sponge, known as spongilla, has spicules made out of glass. It also has a rubbery protein known as spongin, which forms structures akin to spicules, but more flexible than spicules. The long rods with points in the center of the image are glass spicules. There are also less straight spicules. These are also glass. These two types of glass spicules are partially embedded in a matrix of spongin fibers. These fibers cover the balls known as gemmules, an important part of sponge reproduction. Like many other glass spicules, these spicules are long and have sharp points. Although the previous spicules are quite small in relation to the gemmules, in many sponges, spicules are actually larger than the gemmules. This single gemmule contains small spicules that don't look like rods. Those are also glass spicules, but in a different shape, known as amphidiscs, again embedded in spongin on the gemmules. Also, spicules are not just found on sponges, but also in other organisms. Notice the contrast between the calcium carbonate spicule on the left from the sea pansy Ranilla, with the pointed glass spicules of the sponge Axionella on the right. Thus, spicules are surprisingly complex, forming different shapes and structures from different materials. But despite their diversity, all spicules support sponges structurally while providing the flexibility that we know sponges for most.